All right. Hey YouTube, I'm Lucky, and Beyond Light's been out for 2 days. The reviews are in, and it's not looking extremely good. But I want to know in the comment section below, what do you think? How are you experiencing Beyond Light? On a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate it? Please comment down below before I jump into this video, because I don't want this video to sway you one way or the other. Obviously, I'm having fun playing Beyond Light because I'm kind of a Destiny addict, and I'll play it no matter what. I've mentioned this before, where I just like Destiny content. I like the world of Destiny, and sometimes the expansions are awesome, and I play them a lot more. And sometimes they're not the best, and I'll sit out a little bit that season. But I still play Destiny no matter what because I'm a content creator, and I have fun playing it no matter what. So that being said, now that you've commented that, the reviews are in, and they're mixed. A lot of people have said Beyond Light is about a 6 out of 10. It shows here on Steam as 57% of the 720 users reviews for this game are positive. So it's at about a 57% approval out of 720, and it's about a 6 out of 10. And if you compare that to a game like Among Us, which recently come out, it's like overwhelmingly positive. It's all positive for Among Us. You know, everyone is saying good things about it. Obviously, that's a different game, though. We don't need to compare that. It's like comparing apples to oranges. You know, we don't need to go over the reviews in such a manner like that. But it is important to note for Beyond Light that the reviews are kind of mixed, and there's a lot of negative reviews. And what I'm actually going to do in this video is I'm going to make a fair assessment, and I'm going to read one of the negative reviews, the first one that comes up, and I'm going to read one of the positive ones. I'm going to give you my fair assessment of what people think of the game. And that being said, we've only played it for 2 days, so let's be honest here. We need to give it a little more time. You know, if you judge it by just the initial launch, one, you haven't played everything that there is available to you this first week. And it's important to understand that there's more that's meant to come week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. And that's by design. They want to reveal this as a sort of plan. You know, we haven't even met Aldrin yet. You know, that's going to be crazy. That's going to be really cool. So take this all with a grain of salt to a certain extent. So we have these reviews here. I'll click on this one. The first one at the very top is not recommended, a negative review. Okay, here we go. There's a sharp divide in this expansion's reviews. You either see people praising it or trashing it. And instead of me coming through with a centrist opinion, I agree that both sides are right. Beyond Light is somehow pretty good and fairly at the same time. Fairly love at the same time. To begin, the actual expansion is good. The new strikes added are great. The new exotics and old returning ones are great. The zone is exceptional to look at. The story is pretty interesting and moves the setting forward in exciting ways. And the changes to the UI make the game a lot better to play. The crowning jewel of this expansion is Stasis, which functions very differently than the other powers. It's a generic video game freezing power for sure, but the presentation of it and how it functions in combat is so different than the norm. It carves out a niche as a powerful debuff and add clear skill set that can cause enemies to become walking mines, coupled with some great sound effects and strong abilities, and it's clear that Stasis is a fantastic new tool to work around. My only problem at the moment is that Element's lack of integration into gear. No weapons, to my knowledge, actually fire Stasis projectiles outside of the exotic grenade launcher. Yes, that's true. Obviously, that would happen with time. Like, there's going to be more that fire Stasis, so I guess it is kind of limited to that subclass. But to expect a ton of new exotics to be firing Stasis, I mean, that might be a fair demand, but you know, with time, I imagine that, and we're still just getting to know the abilities themselves, but I digress. A few pieces of gear play with the element in neat ways. I'm sure when the new season rolls out, this will be rectified, but overall, Stasis is super fun to use. With the reintegration of the Cosmodrome on top of all this, Beyond Light should be a sure win. Unfortunately, Bungie's development and direction for the game is absolutely pathetic. It's increasingly obvious how much Bungie relied on Activision for funding, as the game is now crippled without their financial backing. So many places that needed revamping have been left untouched. Vendors have still not been refreshed. That is a big complaint. That's one that I will say is fair. Vendors should have been refreshed with this new expansion, especially the fact that we had a delay to it. But I digress. There have been no changes to the seasonal model after the massive complaints received with Shadowkeep's model. The European vendors sell pittances and so on. Worst of all, the game recently vaulted a huge amount of content for a variety of reasons. Buggy, no one was playing it, etc. The problem, most of this content was both stuff people paid for and was made free for New Light players. This means that the vast majority of free content that New Light players could access and thus entice them to continue playing the game was taken out of the game. What's left for them? Not much. Even then, the excuses Bungie gave for the sunsetting are excuses for problems they caused and could easily be fixed. That being said, I do think that there's a lot for New Light players to play. I myself am obviously not a New Light player, but if you look at the list of things there's played, there's quite a bit to play as a New Light player. I think there's more than enough to entice you if you actually want to play the game. But the game is like an MMO. It's kind of a niche audience. So like, if you vibe with it and you're like, yep, this is my thing. I'm gonna grind. I'm gonna get my power up. I'm gonna max everything out. I'm gonna try and beat these activities. then you vibe with it, and if you don't, then you don't. So I do think that the new light, what's presented to new light players is fair in my opinion, and I think it gives them a good assessment of what they would be getting if they did pay for the game. And I do think that they could have fixed the game a lot better than sunsetting. I think that sunsetting is definitely a cop out for proper sandbox design, but that being said, there are budget cuts, as we've talked about. Even Luke Smith has even addressed this, and that's important to understand with Destiny and with Bungie in general. Is that without Activision, things are kind of operating on a slightly smaller scale than they were before, and there's some negative side effects that come from Activision leaving Bungie or from Bungie leaving Activision, whichever way that went. But I'll continue on with this. Uh, Final Fantasy XIV makes it so that older content is constantly in rotation so that new players can experience it all and rewards older players for going back to it by offering endgame rewards. Why could Bungie not do the same? Even better, all the content that got vaulted could have been replaced by content that came in Shadowkeep, like the Fun as Hell, Sundial, or other activities. That's right, Bungie's own FOMO model. Them over hard, and I've talked about this FOMO many times. Fuck them over hard, and now this expansion is even harder to get into than Shadowkeep was, which was the expansion Bungie literally offered as filler so that this expansion could be bigger. Definitely some fair points to be made in there. I can't argue entirely with all of that, but I'll continue on. The incompetence on display here is absolutely unbelievable. When the season starts up, we'll see if this is rectified, but as it stands now, Beyond Light is asking a lot from players for ultimately very little. At this point, Bungie should ditch expansions altogether, just focus on making seasonal content that doesn't get taken away later to improve the state of the game, once again devoting time to a problem they created via their incompetence at MMO design. This is why this expansion has middling reviews. What Bungie has added is nowhere near enough to justify what they have taken out, and the company is once again back on its hands and knees begging players to stay with them without giving them any reason to. That is a really harsh review. I will say that there is some merits to that in a lot of ways. They did mention that the game is getting bloated, and we have seen issues with the game becoming too bloated. In fact, I don't know if you remember, if you're a diehard player, you remember where we loaded into the reset at one point in time. We played for a little bit, and people's things were missing from people's inventory. They had to rewind the clock. They actually ended up having to do that twice over, rewind the clock, and so that's partly blamed to the game being a little bit too bloated. I do find it a little bit tough to sunset planets when there's content on there that could be fun for new light players to experience, and to refresh those places up once in a while. But I guess because the game got too big, those things needed to be sunset. Do I think that what's available to us right now is a fair substitute for what's been taken away? I don't know yet entirely. We're 2 days in, and I haven't really sunk my teeth into it just enough yet. But at this point in time, the stuff that was taken away was stuff that I, as a daily Destiny player, did not play regularly at all. So I don't feel any loss for losing that stuff. Maybe you feel differently in the comment section below. Let me know. But I personally don't agree with that assessment of that content going away. And I think that new light players have plenty enough to entice them to play the game, again, if you're the type of person that plays this game. I'm going to go over a positive review now. Let's see here. We've got, after just beating the campaign, here are my first few impressions. Positive. First, starting out the campaign and getting into the first few missions, it felt as if the campaign was going to be boring and have a dull story, but after getting further into it and getting more lore and understanding what is going on, it gave me the enjoyment and got me pretty hyped for the last few missions. A few new enemy types bring more diversity into battle. Stasis is a breath of fresh air, with it being a new super. Granted, it does not have as much of a choice as of yet with the other subclasses. It is still enjoyable to use and how different it can be and play. I agree with all of that for sure. I like Stasis. I like what it adds. I definitely feel like it's a breath of fresh air, especially considering we've been playing these classes for so long now. With Beyond Light launches Season of the Hunt, Season 12. As with all other seasons, it brings new cosmetics, resources, currency, and armor. I absolutely love the Warlock ornaments and the new style they bring with each 3 classes. Europa is the new planet that is the main place for the Beyond Light campaign story. This ice world is absolutely stunning and the new best-looking planet, in my opinion. The snowstorms that happen can be a little frustrating, but it adds that depth to the planet and how it acts. The Beyond Light soundtrack gets you in the mood of the frosty landscape and captures how the story feels. Negatives, launch wasn't the greatest, but for me, getting in fairly early was a minor setback. I know other players the case was different, but having to wait an extra hour was honestly worth it. Monument to Lost Lights wasn't the best thing to add. I understand wanting to let everyone get the chance to get removed exotics and items, but it makes the feeling of pride and sweat that was put into the grind to get said items feel like it was worth almost nothing except for the resources you save, not having to spend the time to get them now. Titan being removed was a fat L. A lot of people not liking Titan being removed. A few people have told me that now. Let me know. F's in the comments for Titan. In my opinion, I think this DLC wasn't the greatest to be added, but I honestly think it beats Shadowkeep. I'm excited to see how it goes forward from here with content and story. The raid will be added on November 21st, so here's hoping that will be good. I agree with this assessment in a lot of ways. I like what Stasis brings to the game in a lot of ways. It's like new, exciting, interesting. It's a little bit crazy in the Crucible, and I think that there's going to be a shock to the community in general where they're like, holy crap, like the Crucible is wildly different now. And it can be a little bit frustrating because the game is an FPS game, first person shooter. And sometimes it feels like you're not really shooting your gun a whole lot because there's just all this crazy shit going on. There's crystals and there's supers, there's, flying projectiles all over the place. So we'll see how it goes with time, but I do agree with this review largely. And my overall opinion of Beyond Light is probably going to be around an 8 out of 10. I'm overall happy with it. I think Europa is beautiful. I think Europa is amazing. It's such a huge destination. And there's so many secrets and things down below and beneath it that are so exciting and make this it makes its most beautiful location I've seen, in my opinion. And I'm just super happy to hop on it and be a part of this campaign and be a part of this expansion. So overall, 8 out of 10 in my opinion. Let me know in the comment section below what you think, and we'll see how the reviews go, especially as time goes on and we see more of the game. So there it is. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.